care for all institutions in Alberta. Because we are right on time, Rosanna is back online, so we can welcome everyone to the fourth and final workshop of Building Our Strengths Mindfulness Conference 2021. And for our newcomers, my name is Helen from Alberta Mind Biotech, and I have the pleasure of introducing once again our facilitator who came back from this morning for the final session. If you have come from the morning, you'll already know Rosanna and have heard my intro early on, so I'll do my best to make it very quick. She is a longtime community and wellness advocate in the Calgary area and offers meditation training to broad demographics of children, adults, seniors, and organizations across North America and Europe. Rosanna has worked schools across Calgary and has provided several professional development workshops to major teacher and out-of-school provider organizations in Alberta. She has given numerous workshops for nonprofit groups such as Girl Guides and the Calgary Women's Centre. Additionally, she has worked with many private companies and government organizations to provide staff training in mindfulness and mental health, wellness, and self-care. Rosanna is dedicated to promoting self-reliance through healthy discipline, compassionate self-knowledge, and sensible diligence in managing our own mental health and wellness. So finishing that intro up and saving the best for last, we welcome back Miss Rosanna Dianio, everyone.
Thank you so much, Helen.
No problem.
Welcome back, everyone. How many people from this morning are back here about? Just let me know in the chat. And I'll just begin by honoring this territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy and Métis, at least from where I lead this practice, as an act of reconciliation and gratitude. Thanks again to the organizers for inviting me and for all the participants for attending this excellent event. We're ready to transform culture, and it's just such a great group of people. So this morning, I think I'm just going to kind of pick up from where I left off this morning. In my summary for this workshop, we were supposed to do a few additional mindfulness practices, so we'll do those too, just so you know how to do them, and if you want to share them with others, you will have a basic idea of how to do that. But then we'll get deeper into some of the ideas that I was talking about this morning about how we can best prepare for mindful relating, preparing with our own internal practice, our own internal inquiry, and cascading that to the world around us, because we are the best witnesses for the power of mindfulness in culture. If we are, authentic and we have the skill set ourselves to display 24/7. All right, let's see here. We left off with a heartfulness meditation. We talked about how giving may be easier than receiving. Let's pick up with a second heartfulness meditation. And this time we're going to call to mind, in your mind's eye, someone, or, could be a pet or a person passed on, still here, that you struggle with. So now we're applying heartfulness in conflict rather than when it's easy, right? And that's our challenge as mindful champions, is how do we walk our talk, when the SHIT hits the fan. We need to be able to pull this out when it really matters. So this is one way we can visualize, and that's what we'll do in our first practice. This type of visualization in mindfulness meditation is pretty common for performance anxiety, for stress management, and for conflict management. And conflict management can be helping children visualize a new way of handling the playground bully to pretty high level corporate conflict. Okay, let's begin by getting back into our mindful bodies. I just see Yifru saying, "Here I am since morning." Welcome back. It's nice to see you. Okay, so the mindful body, strong and straight, calling to mind the image of something strong in nature, like a tree or mountain, whose roots extend far beyond what is visible on the surface, as do our own bodies, our own identities. We are much more than we appear to be on the surface. We have great reserves of strength and wisdom within. And when we sit in practice, we're connecting with that higher self. We're listening to that higher self and talking to it. Imagining a mountain whose base extends down to the mantle of the earth, and noticing the support we glean from being denizens of this earth. It's such a big place, and we're such a little blip on it. With each breath, noticing with gratitude the power that we have from sky and air. Each breath is a reminder of our potential, is a reminder of an unwritten future. And with each exhalation, we release what doesn't serve. Listening for the sounds in my own body now. I'll cycle through some of the anchors we covered this morning just in case there are new participants. My tummy is gurgling a bit from eating an apple. And stretching out our mindful listening even further. What do we hear in our practice room? What's happening right here, right now? Very busy place, even in the silence. There's electricity thrumming, water, birds, traffic, sirens. Practice can be done eyes open or closed, whatever you're more comfortable with. Generally, in a classroom, trauma survivors are not comfortable having eyes closed, so eyes open, eyes closed, whatever you're comfortable with. With eyes open, you can use your surroundings as an anchor, but it is easier to get distracted by stuff. And inhaling deeply, noticing the rise and fall of the torso. Here's our breath anchor. The breath is our superpower because it metabolizes our stress hormones. And if we train this as a kind of self-hypnotic trigger, we can achieve great benefits from a deep breath or a few of them when we're under pressure. But that's a skill you have to train. And so let's do that now. With gratitude for the discipline and traction that we are securing in practice. With gratitude for commitment to manifesting highest and best for self and community. And allowing the belly to relax and the torso to rise and fall. Noticing our feet on a floor or mat, our sit bones in a chair or on the floor, wherever you're seated. Notice what's holding you up. With gratitude and compassion for these perfect, imperfect vehicles that carry us around the sun. With each breath, we inhale our potential, our wisdom, our strength, stoking it like a fire. And with each exhalation, we release what doesn't serve. The inner critic complaining and judging. And we can say to that inner critic, hello, old friend. Welcome back. But now I'm putting you on the shelf. And when we practice that enough, it becomes a habit. In case you've been holding your breath A reminder to breathe, noticing the rise and fall of the torso, this wonderful gift of oxygen and a system, miraculous system. Noticing where in the body we are collecting tension. Let's take a trip. Noticing my knees and legs. Releasing the belly. Relaxing the hands. The shoulders and the face. And cycling through those body parts that tend to collect tension once again. The belly, the hands, the face and shoulders. And the final anchor we covered this morning, the thoughts and emotions. Noticing where my thoughts take me. Let's label past, present, and future. This indicates just how much time we're available to ourselves in the present moment and how much time we may spend planning for a future that hasn't happened yet or obsessing about a past that we can no longer control. So right now we commit to being very available to ourselves because this is how we give highest and best to self and other. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? Am I planning? Spacing out? Worrying? Enjoying? It is all welcome at this party, all of the thoughts and feelings we experience. Greet them with compassion and return to the breath. And finally, before we proceed into our second heartfulness meditation, observing what it feels like to sit and practice, congratulating ourselves on this achievement, on the indulgence and decadence of this tremendous self-care, where we can sit and give ourselves undivided attention in a very heartful, meaningful way for just a few moments. And calling to mind the image of someone with whom we disagree, we have conflict, can be present or passed on. First stop, notice the sensations and feelings that this brings up. Perhaps the expansiveness that we enjoyed a few moments ago is shrinking, and maybe there's constriction in the chest and it's hard to relax. your body parts, your face, your belly. So let's greet both the image of this person with whom we're having a conflict or have had a conflict, and our own response, a primal response. Let's greet both of these with compassion. It's inner wisdom now doing the seeing. It's our highest potential. Provides the container we need to manage this relationship. Now this might stick in your craw a little bit, but let's do it. Imagine you're this person with whom you have a conflict, and let's continue with the heartfulness meditation. So visualize saying to this person, may you be healthy. May you be happy. May your way be easy. I wish you success and comfort. Imagine this person receiving the gift of your heartfulness with an open heart, with a willingness to move forward. Notice how you feel having offered the gift of your heartfulness and forgiveness and having it be received. And let's sit with that for a moment. In particular, notice any feelings of relief you experience and freedom in having released a grudge this way, in being able to let go of what doesn't serve. And in this case, when we experience relief in heartfulness meditation with others with whom we have conflict, we experience the benefit of forgiveness, how forgiveness restores flow to relationships. And let's take several more deep breaths. And let's return our focus back to center. And just as we continue, if anyone would like to pipe into the chat about your experience with heartfulness meditation, we've kind of done 3 versions of this now. Giving loving kindness to our loved ones, receiving loving kindness from our loved ones, and now this 3rd meditation where we give heartfulness meditation to someone with whom we have a conflict. So you can imagine what the fourth flavor of this is, and that is receiving loving kindness from someone with whom you have a conflict. This can be particularly beneficial if you are struggling with unresolved conflict in a relationship with a loved one who has passed over. So that this sitting in this type of meditation can bring great relief for severe grief. So let's try it out. And this is tough because we hang on tight, right? We hang on tight to our positions, to our biases and our strong emotions. Because they're strong, they feel very real, they feel very important to us. And it doesn't feel as important or worthy to let go. But actually, that's what brings the greatest relief. It is the greatest release from our own suffering. So let's visualize a loved one. Sorry, not a loved one. Let's visualize someone with whom we have had a conflict or currently do have a conflict. It can be the same person or different. And let's reverse the operation. While we're doing this, please pay attention to your own body responses, the flurry of emotions that surface. Please feel free to stop and write down any thoughts that are very repetitive, any emotions, any inspirations that come to bear. When better out than in, as I said in our previous session, and that way the thoughts and emotions won't hijack the progress we're making, because since you've got them on paper, you can let go and come back to them later when you have time for more inquiry on just that one topic. So calling to mind a person with whom we have or had a conflict, and let's visualize receiving their offering of forgiveness and loving kindness. I'm sorry. I wish you well. I wish you peace. I wish you ease. May your path be straight and pleasant. I forgive you and I ask your forgiveness. Notice the sensations that creates, the emotions that arise. Some of them can be very unwelcome, but they are welcome here. This is our safe space to explore and accept complex, difficult emotions. It's when we sit with them mindfully in practice that we learn truly they pass. The intensity passes if we sit with them for just a moment longer. It seems impossible, but eventually we develop the discipline to sit longer and longer with our difficult emotions. If you have experienced grief, you'll know exactly what this is like. It's being awake all night, one breath at a time. Don't know if you can get to the next breath, but it happens. We keep breathing and we wake up in the morning alive. And bit by bit, it gets a little bit easier. So our job is to remember one breath at a time. Inhale the power, the potential of the higher self, and exhale what doesn't serve. And let's bring our attention back to center. If you notice, A, that both of these practices are impossible, then that is worthy of inquiry. Um, what are you holding on to and why? Is it helpful? Do you want to be right or happy? All those old questions. So there's that. If you are, if you notice it's easier to forgive than to receive forgiveness, that also can represent a potential imbalance that you may want to address with inquiry, or even just further visualizations in meditation practice. The filling up of our bucket that we do during practice is something we can call upon in a stressful situation. So, for example, for people with high performance requirements, musicians, athletes, executives, this kind of stuff, um, when we practice, we often will do visualizations for how to keep it cool under stress or under conflict. And the key thing to do is visualize a successful performance, a successful event, or a successful meeting. The positive visualizations, laying our intention of what we want to manifest in the future, is very important. In fact, that's probably a better way to phrase it than it doesn't sound like daydreaming. Visualization, what we are doing is we are projecting an intention with detail. Often with singers, if there's some kind of vocal problem, I will say just intend to do it like this. Intend to put the air at the front of your face. Intend to think, something different. And it's that simple act of intention that it solves the problem. So this this delicious intention we have, it's a very powerful tool for mindfulness champions, for walking, for being able to walk our talk. If we lay something out pretty clearly and we visualize it going forward, we can draw upon it in a difficult situation. And I don't see any feedback about either direction looking, easier, more difficult, but you can reflect on that on your own. And I really encourage you to pick up any points that you've written down with further inquiry later. The relief we feel in giving and receiving forgiveness, it's probably the most powerful tool we have, and not often enough applied in our current culture and environment here. The next practice I'd like to pick up is gratitude. And so that was another one that I had on the agenda. This one you're probably pretty familiar with. It's count your blessings instead of complaining. You've probably heard your mom and grandma talk about this. And yes, it actually is very helpful. So if I'm working with a group of kids, we get all the big ones. What are you grateful for? Well, food, shelter, my family, education. So yeah, all the basics we are grateful for. But still, I don't have this Minecraft I want, and I really need these shoes, and I'm worried about this test. And whoa, that was my cat. Sorry, that scared the crap out of her. Sorry, Perseph. Okay. So when we sit in gratitude practice, what happens is we drill down past those high level hierarchy of need items. We can drill down into a lot of little things. And eventually, if we sit for a couple minutes, we'll find, oh, I'm just grateful that my shoes are comfortable, or that this water tasted so nice. We get grateful for tiny little things. And what that creates is a great feeling of abundance and prosperity. It's the opposite of quite a bit of our mind chatter, which is telling us we don't have, we're not enough, it's not worthy, all of that. So sitting in the truth of our abundance and being able to recognize the little things that we can be grateful for is really, really helpful in setting aside the mind chatter, which seems more true than the other stuff, simply because we may have been listening to it for decades. Are you gonna meditate, or are you gonna go? Okay. So let's begin by getting back into the mindful body, taking several deep breaths. Thanks, buddy. And once we're settled into the here and now, let's make a list of those things that we're grateful for. You can start with the high level stuff, and let's continue deeper and deeper from there. Very grateful my internet has worked all day. As we continue to make our list of things we're grateful for bigger and bigger, pay attention to what it feels like to feel abundant and prosperous. I have a lot. I have more than enough. I'm as showered with blessings as there are stars in the sky. This practice is a simple one to share with your family. It's a useful talking circle practice as well. If you did want to start a meeting that way, or a staff meeting, um, to do a circle of gratitude before you begin, it lines up our intentions in a heartful way. Um, uh, it exposes our vulnerability as well. And so it reminds us of our common humanity, that we're, together around a table, contributing to a common cause. In particular, the feelings of abundance and prosperity that emerge when we sit in gratitude practice are, are things that fill our bucket. And so, this is what you want to draw upon whenever you're upset or feel a lot of lack. You didn't get a job, you don't have enough, you're laid off, there's, all sorts of problems. A chronic I don't have enough in our society, right? So when you feel the weight of that, the impossible pressure of that, it feels insane, doesn't it? Remember gratitude meditation. Remember what it feels like. Even if you don't have a moment to practice the gratitude meditation, remember the feelings, remember the fullness, and allow them to fill your body and mind. The more frequently we call upon the tranquility and other states we gain during meditation practice while we're handling our day-to-day affairs, the more deeply we achieve transformation. Every breath, every thought, every word, we want to be mindful. Yeah, we screw up, we forgive, we try again. The more you recall the wonder of the breath, the wonder of gratitude, of heartfulness, the easier it is to turn on those feelings in a stressful situation. And the final meditation practice that I wanted to introduce that was on the workshop summary for this particular session was a visualization for conflict management. So number one is the heartfulness meditation for conflict management. Let the heavy lifting be done in the invisible. Sometimes we can't solve all the problems with our words and actions, but the intention we lay during meditation, it matters. It has some impact. So that's our first stop for conflict management, is opening the flow of forgiveness. Find out where I am stuck and holding on to my grudge, and where can I manifest some room for letting that go. Do I want to hold on to that more than I want resolution? If so, why? What do I gain from that? What am I willing to do to make a change? So those lines of inquiry are a first stop for conflict management. So the next practice we will try is calling to mind the image of someone with whom you've had a conflict very recently and you'd like to handle it better. So let's pull up like a real life past event, or a potential future event. We want to visualize what it's going to be like to handle this conflict again. The first thing we do is call to mind the really hot emotions and thoughts that absolutely take over like lightning when we're in a serious conflict. So let's sit with that hot feeling of overwhelming rage or frustration, injustice, righteous anger, all of those things that get us really activated. And just take a deep breath and visualize not responding to the hot feelings. Visualize any rage or righteousness diffusing. Each breath takes us down 100 decibels. Imagine greeting inner wisdom, higher self, our true potential. Let's let this person do the talking and thinking. Instead of responding quickly or off the cuff or something, petty, imagine holding your tongue. Maybe the most skillful response we can come up with is to not respond. Or to be very honest and heartful. For example, I'm not comfortable with what's happened here, but I need to think on it a little bit before I speak with you. Or perhaps visualize a very skillful response where you diffuse the situation completely and you're the hero. Could be something as simple as, thank you for your input, thank you for sharing. I'm going to get back with you soon on that. Imagine someone in your circle has really strong opinions with whom we disagree. Imagine listening to those opinions and feeling thought and emotion getting very activated, or discomfort, just want to get out of there so you don't have to sit through another conversation like this, and sort of nod. Imagine a skillful response. If you could do it over, what would you have said? That honors highest and best for all involved, that recognizes our common humanity, that honors the sovereignty of others. Could be something as simple as, I understand what you're saying, and I disagree, but we don't need to get into that now. Let's keep on task. It could be standing up peacefully and thoughtfully for what you believe in without generating more conflict. I understand what you're saying, and my perspective is this. Let's call to mind another person, perhaps the person on the planet who most easily pushes your buttons. That is a great opportunity to practice a skillful response, right? So imagine this person just shooting off their mouth as usual, hot feelings, breathing through them. And just visualize the feelings dissipating and new feelings replacing those of self-respect, because you have had a skillful response. Worthiness for your achievement in responding skillfully, mindfully. At this time, let's establish a trigger we can use for dealing with this person. A physical trigger that you activate the minute you feel you become aware of discomfort in your being. My go-to for this is I squeeze my thumb. So just focus on the pressure there and notice the hot feelings, but focus more on the pressure I've got in my thumb, squeezing it pretty hard. Breathing in deeply into my highest potential and exhaling that which doesn't serve. breathing in deeply to the traction I've gotten with my commitment to a mindful response. My feelings of worth and success and achievement that come from having trained to respond skillfully. Other ones that I have learned or worked with is you can rub a finger on your palm or on a callus. When dealing with my mother, I don't like clench my teeth, but I just deliberately close my mouth, and I need to feel contact between my teeth, because if I don't, I might open my mouth and say something nasty. So the minute she's got this way of going for the jugular, and I just nod, but make sure my teeth are touching until I've had a chance to breathe quite a bit. So many different triggers we can use. The more you supercharge these during your practice with visualization and other meditations that we've been doing, the more easily you can call upon them in a real life situation. And I love my mom. Just saying. But she's got this way with me. So those are the 3 additional mindfulness anchors that I had wanted to share with the group in the afternoon. If we have time, we can sit in a longer practice with some of those, if that would be enjoyable. However, I am going to get back to my presentation to talk about some of the other ways that we can relate mindfully in real life environments. So number 1, we need a personal practice. We've been developing that over the course of these 2 workshops, developing strategies for how we can do that in the home and workplace. By the way, Juanito asked me a question that I wasn't able to answer before the meeting had ended. He said, what are some strategies for setting up a mindfulness practice in home and at work? Well, number 1, it's consistency and regularity. So which practice is best? It's the one you do. Whatever one you do is the one that's the best. I have had questions, but which one's better than the other? All cultures have a tradition of contemplative silent practice. So bring in your cultural, your religious background, bring it to bear to make this meaningful for you. For faith-based traditions, meditating upon scripture is really important. So that's an opportunity to kind of listen for divine wisdom rather than to ask for stuff. It's different than traditional prayer. So there's lots of versions of this. Make something work for you. If you find that you're just too busy, you don't have time to sit for 25 minutes a day, start smaller. Do it in bed when you first wake up. Do it on your way to sleep if you struggle with sleeping, in the middle of the night if you struggle with insomnia. So in the morning, first thing, the minute you're out of the morning fog in bed, give thanks, right? Give thanks for another day, a clean start, a new inhalation that honors highest and best. It's another chance to offer yourself and your community highest and best. And so start the day with an intention like that and keep it simple. Do a body scan, a listening exercise, take 10 breaths. See if you can get even to 10 before your mind wanders. Returning compassionately to the breath. Always noting thoughts and emotions, especially the difficult ones, worry, fear, shame. Note them so you can inquire, so you can accept and inquire later, rather than stuffing them under the rug and just keeping going. When we stuff down those things, they explode. So allow them to emerge first thing in the morning for a few minutes. If that's what you can do before you get out of bed, that's plenty. That's plenty to start with. And then definitely, I had mentioned the active meditations. So you can, for example, dedicate an activity or a chore to mindfulness. For me, it's dishes. My dishwasher is busted and we haven't gotten a new one yet. which I don't mind because all those pots and pans there, they never get clean anyway. Maybe the new one will be better. But when we're washing dishes, my boys and I, it's quiet time and we're focused on the movements. Um, we're conscious of not enjoying it and being kind of a rush because we want to get on to other stuff, maybe tired at the end of the day. But we are committed for this, 5 minutes. We're going to be together in silence. We're going to be careful with our movements, careful about how we position things, how we place things, and breathing through the feelings of resentment and anger that come from having to do chores. Oh, this stuff again, and countering that with gratitude. For example, isn't it great that we have dishes to wash? Or isn't it great that we've got food to put on the dishes? Um, so that's an active family practice that's pretty short and very regular. The other active practice that I do is mindfulness while driving. Um, and that really helps me deal with road rage. So that's one that I need. And while I'm driving, I try to be aware of my movements on the road, the vehicles around me. I might, try to memorize license plates. Always observing my emotions when I feel that someone has done me wrong or I've got to do someone wrong or something like that. So just being really careful about the hot feelings that arise in that public anonymous space, and how even in that anonymous space I want to give my highest and best even there. So those are two active meditations that are in my household, and there's many others you could do. If you pick an activity you kind of dislike and turn it into a mindfulness gratitude exercise, that's very fruitful. Regularity and consistency are the keys. If you do it once a week, you can't fill up your bucket to draw upon it in a pinch. You can't develop the skill set you need to respond mindfully with the stresses of real life. So, the more you can pull it up during the course of a day, the better, and you will get better results from a seated contemplative practice. If you can spare, 10, 15 minutes, that would be something that would deliver good results. Okay, so let's get over to my presentation. If I still have it here. Where is it? This one. In our previous workshop, this is where we'd left off. We had talked about what's the internal work that we need to do to be mindfulness champions. And so we have talked about developing our own practice, acknowledging imperfection, honoring the sovereignty of those in our care. They all have dreams and hopes and worries, and we don't want to project our bias onto them either. Cultivating self-kindness and self-compassion. In many ways, that is done repeatedly in seated contemplative practice as we return to the breath without criticizing ourselves. Oh, I couldn't even get to 2 breaths before my mind wandered, let alone 10. Just return to the breath, accept the wondrous nature of our busy, problem-solving, creative brains that are constantly searching and searching, and giving ourselves permission to stop for a few minutes. So moving on to the next part of this is some of the external work that mindfulness champions will want to manifest. What have I titled this slide at the bottom? The external work, public practice. So for mindfulness to be successful in an institution, and it can be little or big, the family, an organization, in addition to a private practice, we need public display of authentic walking the talk. Otherwise, you get no buy-in from anyone. There's no real vulnerability exposed that we can turn into something new. So these are things for mindful managers, mindful leaders, mindful caregivers, anyone with people within your sphere of influence, whether you're a father or an executive. We are mindful caregivers. And number one is listening with our full attention. So we need to provide an opportunity for those within our care to get our undivided physical and mental attention. It can be formal or spontaneous. And it's increasingly important for students and children during adolescence, for sure. So, if you'll notice during our mindfulness practice, we can't even give ourselves our full attention for like 2 seconds, right? So, how do we give it to someone else? Well, that's where we're going to practice and do a little bit of inquiry. So, returning to our mindful body now, what what we're going to inquire about is what distracts me from giving my full attention? What are my thought and emotion patterns that waylay my 150% commitment to this person, this moment right now? The same things that distract us in our practice will be distracting us in all relationships. So our practice is nurturing the relationship with ourselves, right? And the same thing, the same distractions will manifest in other relationships. So let's try it. Let's inquire. Returning to the mindful body with a couple deep breaths. Listening and noting where we experience discomfort. And now asking, inhaling with our true potential, asking this wondrous self who is committed to highest and best for self and others, what distracts me from giving my full attention to myself? You might not get an answer like an epiphany, but just follow the progress of your thoughts, because that is a valuable trail of breadcrumbs. What am I worried about? What am I afraid of? Take a moment to give thanks for any awareness that you have gained. Funny enough, how many of the things that we that distract us are the fear of not belonging. And throughout this conference, we've explored the nature of the brain, which parts are activated during meditation. We've got the reptile cortex that manages flight fight, and if that's engaged all the time, our big mammal creative problem solving forgiving brains, um, they're not used as much as they need to be. So often what is distracting us from giving ourselves full attention is this fear of not belonging, this fear of being shamed, excluded. Now, we're wired this way, right? In the past, if you were ostracized from your little community, maybe you couldn't survive on your own. So that fear of not belonging is pretty deep. It's pretty primal. However, it's not true. It's not true in this particular context. So we're looking to get our big mammal brains back online with mindfulness to solve this problem. Is what I'm afraid of, is what distracts me from listening and giving my full attention to myself and others, is it true? Is it real? And often when we inquire and unpack the fears that emerge in this process, we can see that it's simply not It's not possible. It's not rational. And that's where our big mammal brain can come in to diffuse our primal flight fight response to situations. Anytime you're distracted by thoughts or would like to make notes for further inquiry, please do. It does free us up to really rest with the process if there's a nagging thought that we can get on paper. Our next stop here is non-judgmental acceptance of ourselves and those within our care. So those are pretty big words. What's that going to mean in the moment? What's that going to mean as a mindful moment as well? And this often also requires genuine and potentially uncomfortable inquiry into our deepest recesses of shame and fear and ambition. So, when we're not able to accept others, when we find that we're judgmental of others, it usually reflects traits that we don't accept about ourselves. Are those realistic? Are they appropriate? So that is something worthy of inquiry. So let's sit with that for a moment as well. And actually, I see that it's 3:00. I will take a short body break right after this one short practice. So let's return to our mindful bodies. And let's call to mind a situation, a person where we had some pretty strong opinions about what was right and wrong. And let's begin to explore that. And I'll just ask a few guided questions here. Where do I communicate unknowingly, non-verbally, that I and those in my care are not whole, are not prosperous, are not worthy of unconditional love? What habits do I follow that perpetuate judgment and non-acceptance of myself? Our principle here is that we can only give to others what we've given to ourselves first. It's much easier to work towards non-judgmental acceptance of self and those within our care if we have explored within where we do not accept ourselves and where we're very harsh with ourselves. My third question for this inquiry is: challenges and mistakes are healthy, they're normal, they're unavoidable, and they're often navigable. Where am I intolerant of myself? Where do I not give myself permission to make mistakes or to be weak, to ask for help? Where am I intolerant of those within my care? And the triggers can be very little. I've got one that comes to mind actually with my own kids. My ex-husband is a veteran with PTSD and severe alcoholism. So, he's got a very difficult journey. And one of the reasons we had divorced was he was a terrible example for my kids, and I couldn't have them growing up seeing that this was normal. So every once in a while, when I feel like my kids aren't accomplishing enough, I'll pull that up. I'm like, you've got to get that done because you can't turn out like your dad, right? And so that, what a terrible thing to say. And that is an excellent opportunity to unpack where I'm intolerant of myself, where I'm intolerant of my kids. So one place in this scenario where I'm intolerant of myself is that I don't know if I have forgiven myself for being in this relationship so long or not being able to fix it. At some point, like more than a decade ago, I tried to join Al Anon. It's this support group for spouses and loved ones of alcoholics. And they're like, you got two choices. You can accept your alcoholic or you can leave him. I'm like, nope, I'm going to fix him. And I couldn't, obviously, but am I still holding on to that? Could I speak to my kids that way if I wasn't still holding on to that? So that's what I mean. This particular topic requires, it can be pretty painful self inquiry where we expose a lot of vulnerability. That's not easy to do in the workplace with colleagues, right? Um, so that is a personal inquiry. However, you will be aware of, we will be aware of our intolerance and judgment of others immediately in a workplace or other institution because we'll feel it in the body. So the more tapped in we are to like an imbalance, the hot feelings, anything like that, discomfort, fuzziness in the head, anything that arises when we have conflict or judgment on the line where our bias might prevent us from having a skillful response to a situation, we'll feel it in the body even before your mouth opens. So get used to that and find the practice that works for you to respond skillfully, whether it's taking a deep breath, a short time out, start observing and paying attention so that we can give ourselves the gap we need to create a skillful response that's aligned with our highest and best as humans. Okay, 308, short little body break. We'll do one short practice for each of these other tips. Let's take a mindful body break. Maybe step out into the sun if you can and just take a big stretch, noticing your body expanded up. You know what it feels like to open up all your muscles. As you walk, pay attention to the feeling of your feet on the floor, the sights that you see instead of this computer screen or phone you may be looking at. Enjoy some of the colors and shapes that surround you, and grab a drink and a bathroom break if needed. And I will see you in, let's say, 4 minutes. How's that sound? Perfect timing for our little break. I just had a student come up to my door and drop off this box of chocolates. L'amour. What are they? Pralines with creamy fillings. Okay, so since this is serendipity, this box of chocolates must have arrived for a reason. All right, I'm going to lead us in a mindful eating exercise. This is a really fun one to share with children, colleagues also. If you're having a lunch together, you can dedicate a few moments of silence to eating mindfully. And so the goal there is to really notice the textures, the smells of whatever you're eating. So for mindful eating, we would begin by, I'm holding this chocolate. It's actually starting to melt, but I'm just, observing the shape and the colors. There's all this delicate workmanship on the front. There's a little rosette here. And so I'm just enjoying the colors and the care that went into making this. I'm also observing my own response. I'm salivating. And I'm excited, man. Like they say that behind every successful woman is a fridge full of chocolate and a cat. And it must be true because I am excited. So I'm observing the present moment, but I'm observing within as well to pay attention to my responses, training the focus and learning about myself too. Okay, now I'm going to smell it. It smells pretty good. It's not Calibo, but it smells pretty good. I can smell that it's warm. It's starting to melt in my hands. So the more I notice about this, the better. You can imagine what it's like doing this in school. It's totally pandemonium. Trying to get everyone to be quiet. They're so excited. And, then everything starts melting too if it's chocolate. So usually I'll use like a raisin or something like that in an environment. Okay, and then, taking a little bite. And just really noticing the way it sits in my mouth. I'm noticing that I can smell it while I'm tasting it, and it's getting softer and softer. And even just that little bite, it kind of filled my chocolate need, but I've got so much more left. So eating this box of chocolates like without mindfulness, I could have pounded through 3 or 4 already. But instead, I've just taken a bite and I've really enjoyed it. And it's also been a teaching opportunity too. So that's just a short, quick meditation on mindful eating. To do this with kids and family is a lot of fun. You can dedicate the beginning of a meal with your family to silence so you can enjoy a little bit of mindful eating together before you begin conversation. And that's a great practice, an easy practice, a comfortable practice to introduce in the workplace as well. The more we honor our food, the less we eat, so it has all these other health benefits as well. We also tend to eat better things when we are aware of our food and honor them too. We want, because everything lines up, we want highest and best for self and others. So, when we're mindful about eating, we will put in highest and best. Most of the time. Okay, so moving on. I've ended the screen share because I'll just talk through those points. The third point we have for mindful leadership and managing, and that's in the family or in the workplace too, right? Because a mother is a leader and a manager. Our third point was emotional awareness of ourselves and others. And what we're looking for here is to really pay attention to our feelings and to pay attention to another's feelings at the same time, minding the gap so that we're not reacting automatically. The moment we're engaging with others mindfully, we want this awareness present so that we're not over-identified with any emotions and thoughts. Strong emotions will trigger automatic behaviors and undermine our best practice relating strategies. That's pretty human. So just be prepared to mess up and try again. A commitment to mindful relating this way by honoring the emotional awareness of ourselves and others gives us a little breathing room so that we can make better choices. It gives us greater willingness and ability to endure strong emotions by decentering. noticing that feelings are just feelings. And the result is that we become more fully present with others rather than over identifying and consumed by our feelings. So that's our third key point for mindful management. And so let's sit and practice with a little bit of inquiry on this topic also. Taking a deep breath, straightening the mindful body, comfortable, strong, straight. Highest and best is driving the car right now. What are my triggers? What makes me snap? And how are my buttons pushed? Let's explore looking for some patterns. Maybe it's a lack of control or a sense of falling behind. Maybe it's not being listened to, or a sense that we're not respected. And make notes if it's helpful. So our next point of inquiry is why? Why do we have these triggers? And we can find the answer in exploring what we fear. It's amazing how the fear is basically the same one every time. It's, I don't belong because I'm unworthy of unconditional love. It all kind of boils down to that. So how can we diffuse that? How can we diffuse that in the moment? Our first stop is the breath, because each breath is a reminder of the higher self driving the car. Each breath taps into our greatest potential. Each exhalation releases what doesn't serve. And if you feel comfortable, you can repeat to yourself, I am loved. I am safe. I am respected. Notice how calling to mind the truth of our situation helps diffuse, it also helps diffuse some of the hot feelings that arise when we feel, unloved or unrespected, that our contribution is not valued. That's a key one. It helps us step back a little bit so we don't personalize and overreact to others who may not have intended to hurt us. It helps us remember that we are responsible for our reactions. Nobody can push my buttons unless I let them. Reminding myself that I am in control, I am lovable, I am respected, I am heard is very helpful. So another question we can inquire on this point is, what effect do my buttons have? Like when people push my buttons, what effect does that have on people in my care? Does that shut them down? Does that stop the flow? Does that close down the ability to be vulnerable so we can take risks or be creative or expressive? So, for example, regarding my comments to my son, right? Absolutely shuts him down. Totally disrespects his sovereignty, his own unique human trajectory, right? I just stomp all over him and put him in my little box, my fearful box, that I've made a mistake I can't fix, that I don't have control. And that's not fair, right? That stinks. So we're only human. We do things that stink, right? And I do. I mean, I did this with him. I apologized. I explained my inquiry, and I asked for forgiveness. And he's young enough; he can still offer that open-heartedly, while going, "Yeah, my mom's a weirdo, a hippie weirdo." So paying attention to our triggers, being aware, emotionally aware of others within our care requires great self-control on our part to be emotionally aware of ourselves and our own triggers and responding to those skillfully. This is definitely an avenue where further inquiry is helpful. My next point was self-regulation in any relationship, and it's kind of related to the previous point. We're looking for, as always, responsive instead of reactive relating. So, reactive relating we see all over the place. This is the norm culturally. Um, it's the norm in relationships as well. We've got our guards up so we don't get hurt. Looking to be responsive at an intimate level and in the workplace is a huge cultural transformation. We need to be open, vulnerable, able to make mistakes, accept the consequences, take the wisdom, and move on. It's never easy, ever. And we try again, and it gets easier. So this self-regulation is pivotal in enabling mindful champions to walk our talk. This is how we line up our thoughts and actions with our higher goals and values. And that is number one in teaching those around us. If we can walk our talk, that is the most effective instruction we can provide, as well as improving relationships. So, mindful relating is all about the relationship, investing real heartful attention in those within our care. And this is one of the ways that we can manifest that. So let's go ahead and review some of our triggers from the previous short inquiry. And what I'd like to do is visualize a mindful response for each of these triggers. Taking a couple deep breaths into the strong, straight, mindful body. Calling to mind a situation where we were explosive and want to respond more skillfully. Visualize taking a couple deep breaths so that we are able to respond instead of react. Note with gratitude how awesome it feels to walk your talk when it matters. The self-respect and self-esteem and confidence that gives is priceless. Take an extra moment to sit with this major reward of the self-esteem and confidence and self-respect that we show ourselves, that we accumulate in responding skillfully. This feel-good benefit is definitely one of the bucket items that we can call upon in a pinch. It gives us a sense of control, a sense of empowerment. And it can be as simple as apologizing for having shot your mouth. You know, just thinking about this example with my son, how could I have responded differently? You know, compassionate to the fact that maybe I'd been working for 14 hours and was under a lot of, you know, maybe hadn't slept well or something like that. I may have been tired. So compassionate for my humanity and um, my never-ending ability to make mistakes. Um, I ask for forgiveness. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I was tired and just couldn't control my words. I apologize. But here's what I really mean. I would like for you to get your learner's permit so we can practice driving this summer because I've got a little more time. The roads are less crowded. It's a little bit easier. It'll be fun, and it'll be a nice way for us to spend time together, in my opinion. So if you could buckle down and get that done, it'll be a lot easier to help you learn to drive than it will be in the winter when it's dark and icy and I have less time. So that's my 2 cents. What do you think about that? And when do you think you'll be ready? And what can you do to be ready? And how can I help make that happen? So that's a more skillful response that includes an apology and vulnerability, explaining my perspective, asking for the other's perspective as well. Okay, our final point for successful, mindful leadership and managing, whereby we get more traction in our institutions, the home, the workplace, would be for compassion for self and other. I've heard a lot about this at this conference. It's a cornerstone truly of mindfulness practice and application. Reason is we are our own worst critics. And if we weren't, we might not be ambitious light workers, right? We might not be here today. We might not be pushing ourselves to achieve highest and best. We might just be, you know, happy drinking beer and watching hockey games. But no, we're thinking about how can I bring higher and best? We've got a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset. And so generally, people like that are self critical because I could have done this better. I could have done that better. Um, we want to be able to accept our efforts and the process also, rather than focusing on or obsessing with a specific outcome to each situation. And that is very important for accepting imperfection in ourselves and others. So let's return to the mindful body and let's call to mind a moment when we beat ourselves up for not meeting a goal. Personal, work. Notice the feelings that arise as we contemplate um, not having accomplished something. It's like, it's more than disappointment. There's a great sense of shame and indelible failure. And in sitting with those emotions, that's how we develop the capacity to see, well, they're just not accurate. It's not an accurate picture of this situation. Would I accept this from a friend or loved one? Usually no, right? Usually we speak to ourselves and think of ourselves in terrible ways that we would never accept from someone outside this body. And so what does that say about how we are nurturing our primary relationship? We want to be able to give ourselves the same tenderness and kindness that you would give a young child. You'll recall at the beginning of one of these workshops, I'd spoken about mindfulness practice is actually a form of self-parenting. And in this case, this is one anchor where we can definitely apply healing. So thinking about how negatively we feel about ourselves when we don't meet a goal, How do we feel when others criticize us for not meeting a goal? There's not a worse feeling, right? The reason is, if we can't be compassionate to ourselves, we simply have no ability to take the wisdom from others' criticism and leave behind what doesn't serve. There is no channel that is open to make that happen. We must practice that inside out. Let's take a moment to review any situation where around others we feel we can't make a mistake. What's at risk? What's at play? Identify the primal fear. Is it the same old one? And let's take another moment to call to mind any situations where others don't feel like it's safe to make a mistake around you. As a mindfulness instructor, I may constantly be projecting stuff, like my kids, just their regular adolescent behavior. I might be projecting it into something long term and not helpful. I can see, like, I'm a windbag, and there's many cases where maybe they don't feel comfortable being vulnerable around me because there's all of this expectation of right thought, right action, highest and best, it nonstop, right? And maybe that maybe they're afraid to make mistakes around me because I'll launch into the give your highest and best. So how can I lay off? How can I offer the example and the container for enabling highest and best, minus the mouth and fist? And explore, let's take a few moments to explore any situations in your own homes or workplaces or other environments where others may be fearful, not feel like it's safe to be vulnerable with you to make mistakes. And let's bring our attention back to center. I do invite anyone to post any questions or observations if you'd like to share some of your own impressions in the chat. I see a comment here from Ronnie. Yes, chocolate mindfulness, right? Because then I eat one turtle instead of 4. So, okay. So let's close our session today with a final practice, sitting with the thoughts and ideas that I've brought up, sitting with them for a few minutes to figure out a way forward. We'll lay an intention for this final meditation. Where am I going with this? How can I make this real in my life? In whatever meaningful little way you can, so that I can contribute highest and best to myself and others. Instead of just putting this conference and the openness and heartfulness and wisdom shared here, instead of just putting it on the shelf and getting back to business as usual, rushing around, meeting the next goal, can't let anyone get in my way. Where can I make some real change in myself as a champion, as a leader, as someone who wants to develop a practice and share it with community? Returning to the mindful body. Several deep breaths, and cycle through all of our anchors at your pleasure. I'll just call to mind some of them in case they're hard to remember. Mindful listening, mindful breathing, the mindful body scan, releasing the hands and belly and shoulders, the face, and any other place that is collecting and storing tension. Inviting in our thoughts and emotions. Noticing if I'm spaced out, if I'm worrying, if I'm planning. Noticing if I'm in the past, present, or future. And paying attention to what distracts me from paying full attention to myself. Where do my thoughts and feelings tend to go? Maybe I'm fantasizing or spaced out. Calling to mind the great joy and ease we feel in giving and receiving heartfulness. Calling to mind the great sense of abundance and prosperity we feel when counting our many, many blessings. And calling to mind our commitment to skillful conflict management. Where we show compassion for self and other, where we can practice self-regulation, emotional awareness of ourselves and others. And finally, bringing our awareness back to the center. At this point, we will wrap up our workshop and take any questions that you may have. I don't see any in the Q&A box or in the chat. Any observations that you have about how you feel or next steps for you? Any insights that you've gained that you'd like to share with others because it might be inspiring for them? That is also welcome in this forum. I hear from Katya, I'm glad to meet you. Thank you so much. I'm very glad to meet you also. I'm just going to go back to my screen share for a sec. and get over to my final slide. Oh, I love this slide. I have to show you this one. Keep it playful, keep it fun. This is often very serious. It's seems very important, but if we keep it playful, it's easier to screw up and try again. So very important. Um, I can't count how many times I have like a road rage incident and then I have to grovel to my kids, who are embarrassed in the car, and we're able to laugh about it now too. So it's pretty helpful. Just try and try again. So if you can see this, this is how to contact me going forward. I've got lots and lots of podcasts and videos, meditation videos and stuff up at the website, Calgary Mindfulness. Please feel free to contact me personally at this Gmail address. I host a weekly free community meditation. We'd been doing it outside and inside, actually, in one of the community centers prior to COVID. We had to move outside last summer, but apart from that, we were doing it online, meeting weekly Sunday at 10 a.m., and it was short and sweet, so just 15 minutes to help realign. Anyone is welcome to join any of these free community practices. Usually the City of Calgary hosts some practices as well, so keep posted for those. I'll be offering those through the City of Calgary over the summer and in the early fall. And I look forward to any questions you have. If not in this forum, you can just reach me privately to, air your thoughts.
Here, Rosanna, here's a question from the floor. Do you think that mindfulness practices will evolve over time and become more popular for various demographics?
Absolutely. My opinion that this is a core life skill for emotional, social, and psychological literacy. So the more broadly this can be applied in a secular way, like within the family, as just a basic teaching. We teach our kids how to be responsible because they got to start doing dishes, so they start doing some chores. They clean their rooms. They maybe you give them an allowance, so they learn to manage money. We also want this available as a basic core skill for emotional and social literacy. That's the way it's being offered sometimes in schools. In the beginning of my work with students, there was more interest in a regular visit from an external champion to lead practice, right? Or I would train the teachers and then they would lead their own practices. But something happened, like COVID for sure kind of interrupted that. But even in the year prior to that, there are many like big groups offering a rap about self-esteem. And so the mindfulness, the mental wellness budget of the school is going to purchase that instead of something like, a longer but more thorough investment in the kids. So I'm not sure how that's rolling at the school level. I'm hoping it's going to go back to the way it was in the beginning when I started this work, that the teachers will implement it regularly, and it'll be top down requested, right? Administrators will require that their teachers have some basic secular training in mindfulness meditation so they can apply it in the classroom several times a day, like at every transition, coming into class, leaving the class, coming back from gym, before eating, whatever. You can at least have 3 or 4 opportunities in the class. From what I'm seeing in the workplace, I am offering more and more workshops for companies and government organizations, and mindfulness is a very popular mental wellness modality because it's something it doesn't take up much time and it's not expensive, right? So that's the great thing about meditation. It's instant, it's available. You don't need an app, you don't need a bell. You can do it on the C train for 30 seconds. You can sit at your desk for 10 minutes. So this is a very available modality with tremendous results. So I do see definitely it's definitely going to cascade. It's not a fad that's going away. And I'm hoping it'll be trained as a core relating skill in the workplace, as well as a core literacy skill for students and in families. Thank you for that excellent question.
Here's another one for you. Did you experience difficulties of teaching mindfulness since transitioning online?
Um, at first I thought this sucks, because when you're in a room with people, I am aware of everyone. When I go into a room, usually I'm not prepared. Don't have notes. I feel the room. I and I gauge that way. And so online, I can't connect to the people the same way. So that for me as a facilitator is annoying. However, there's so many benefits of being online. Um, you can't make an excuse not to go, right? Sunday, 10 o'clock, 15 minutes, I can do that. I don't even have to get out of bed. Just, turn on my phone and I can do it. So it's much more available for people who, maybe can't travel or have many other reasons to be distracted. So there's pluses and minuses, being online. Definitely, when you're in person, you feel everybody, not just me, everybody feels everybody. And it's much easier to be committed and to focus. It's way easier to focus basically when you're in a group. If it's the right group, usually the groups are pretty good. Thank you. Excellent question.
Awesome. And one more final one. I think that's all we have. And before we have to turn it in, but this person's asking, what are your thoughts on the mind-body disconnect because of quarantine, allowing people to drop their social responsibilities and masks and then putting it back on again with restrictions being lifted? How should one manage the clashing emotion of doing versus feeling?
Ooh, that's a deep question. I can't even remember the beginning of it. What I remember is mind body incongruence. And that is such a great topic, because we might we might want something with this, but the body's not on board. So I might not want to be nervous in public around others, but my gut says I'm afraid. I'm afraid others are going to make me sick. I'm afraid I might make others sick. I'm afraid to make my mother sick. I'm afraid of everyone around me. So that the COVID has absolutely got us into this flight fight where we are very fearful of our neighbors. Um, and that stinks. And I hope that as we relax restrictions responsibly, that we can overcome that. Um, Mind body congruence is a huge, important topic that I'm not going to be able to do justice to right now. But um, this leads to a lot of interest in being aware, self aware, and aware of others, but inability to do so. So we may think we're aware, but we actually have deep incongruence. The more we sit in personal practice, the more we admit our mistakes and our shortcomings and are compassionate about that, the more we line up the brain and the body. Because the brain is brave and the body is like this scared little kid often, right? And the more we allow our fearfulness to emerge in a safe container, the more we can line up the mind and body and release the fear so that we can give our highest and best. I think I have missed something in this question, but I would like this, whoever asked this question, contact me personally so I can address that more thoroughly. The issue of the masks and social responsibility, a highly conflicted topic, right? It seems like with COVID, everyone's crazies on the outside, and how do we deal with that in the workplace? Even within our own families, there's division, more division about that. How can we respond to that heartfully when people that we're in close contact with don't agree with things that we think are really important? It really is an opportunity to put our practice to the test in action. Thank you for that excellent question.
Okay, well, thank you so much for the wonderful practices, Rosanna.
Thank you.
These mindful practices are just so useful for de-escalating stressful emotions, and I'll be sure to personally incorporate them into my own daily life. It's just so amazing how we can see the body can learn to heal itself through time and quiet reflection. Unfortunately, we have run out of time today, but once again, thank you to Rosanna for your insight and advice on how to live in just a more holistic way of life. For those that came halfway through or missed some particular sessions, all workshops and conference sessions will be available at tieshealthyminds.ca. And finally, we would like to extend our gratitude to all of our attendees. On behalf of Alberta Mind Biotech, we would like to thank you as an audience for taking the time out to come out today and learning with us and TIES. We are incredibly appreciative and hope we provided some assistance to all those that attended.